Hi, YouTube. Basically, we are at my favorite beach. I always come here. I bring all my friends here. We have little conversations. It's the best time. So I guess you could say this is kind of like my comfort spot. So I was looking for some questions to answer in this video specifically. So I asked on my Instagram story as well as my broadcast channel for some questions regarding pretty much any subject. Basically, because I wanted an excuse to chat here in this spot specifically. So first, I think I'm gonna like rapid fire some facts about me, like simple stuff that normally you probably wouldn't think to ask in like a Instagram story question box. And then gonna answer as many questions as I can that I received until I get tired pretty much. Because I kind of received more questions than I was expecting, which can't be mad at that. My sun, my moon, and my rising are all in water, which is terrifying if you really think about it. I'm a Scorpio sun, Pisces moon, and a Cancer rising. I don't know why it had to be that way. And then I'm also a Libra Venus, which I feel like is a good Venus. And then I think my Mars is Aquarius. And then I forgot my Mercury, but I feel like it doesn't matter that much. Honestly, if you can decipher what that means, let me know in the comments because I'm kind of interested to know, even though I feel like I kind of get it, but it's always fun to talk about astrology. I like said I was going to tell you all these facts about me and now I don't know what to talk about. So I'm just going to get into the questions. Okay, first question. It says top 5 musicians slash artists who have you been listening to lately? As of lately, I feel like I've been listening to a lot of random artists. I like have been going through people's like playlist videos on YouTube and like low-key been stealing songs from those playlists. And I've had quite a few good ones come up. But in terms of like top 5 musicians, I would probably just say Kendrick, and then that would be enough for me. If I could only listen to one musician for the rest of my life, one artist, it would be Kendrick, and that would be more than enough for me. But besides that, I've also been listening to Cardi a lot recently since he just dropped his album. And I know that you wouldn't expect that of me because I get that a lot. Like people say that I don't look like I would listen to rap type music, but it's actually quite literally all I listen to. So that's a fun fact. Now you know that about me. The second question, how did you start curating your personal style? I feel like this is my most asked question alongside like who are your biggest inspirations? But in terms of curating your personal style, I feel like there's a lot of people talking about this online recently, like giving advice on what you can do to like hone in on your personal tastes and whatnot. But when it comes to me, I feel like it's all just been trial and error. I've always had an interest in fashion since I was young, and over time, I've just tried out a lot of clothes. You know what I mean? Like, I had a big thrifting phase like years ago, and that helped me sort of experiment without spending too much money. And then from there, it's just adding to your wardrobe little by little, right? Like, I often shop on Depop. I sometimes shop from brands, but honestly, most often, Depop flea markets. Like, LA has really good flea markets, so I'm definitely into that. And over time, you just like really start to hone in and simplify the things that you would pick up if you see it in person or online or whatever. So I feel like as you build, you just become more and more picky. And as a result, your style becomes more specific. The next question, was it hard to find what style makes you feel like you? Do you ever feel like you're missing out on all the different ways you could dress? I feel like this is such an interesting question because, admittedly, sometimes I really do think about how I could be dressing in different ways. Like, just in terms of my identity, sometimes I struggle to balance the different sides of myself, I suppose you could say. So I tend to dress a lot more on the feminine side, and I feel like in terms of my expression, that's fulfilling because I could be wrong, but I feel like a lot of more feminine silhouettes in clothing are more interesting and you can kind of build off of it and layer it and make it more dynamic. Whereas masculine silhouettes can kind of be restricting in the sense that you can't layer or like make it super interesting. Also, since I'm really into patterns and like colors and stuff, I feel like you find that a little bit less in men's clothing. So, in that sense, I really am drawn to more feminine pieces, but at the same time, I feel an urge to juxtapose those feminine pieces with masculine pieces at the same time, just because sometimes I don't feel the most comfortable or the most myself in super feminine silhouettes. I feel like a lot of people can relate to this. So, what I often find myself doing is on more casual days, I'm dressed a little bit more masculine, and on my like cuter outfit days, on my more exciting outfit days, I'll be dressed in more feminine silhouettes. But even then, I do try to juxtapose it at least a little bit, so that I can feel comfortable in my more feminine outfits as well. Did that even answer the question? The first part asks, was it hard to find what style makes you feel like you? So, in that sense, I would say maybe a little bit to this day because I love the outfits that I wear now, but I don't always feel the most comfortable in them in public. And I feel like that's a common issue with people who aren't super confident in their style or in general because you could wear cute outfits all you want, but once you have to go in public in them, you might not feel the most comfortable, you know? And that's just, you should know that that's across the board. Like a lot of people feel that way. The next question, what makes you feel the most seen? I love this question. One of my good friends asked me this question. In terms of feeling the most seen, I feel like a lot of times it's making something, creating something, and feeling like it reflects you in an accurate way. Like sometimes when I create something and I feel really proud of it, and I feel like it is very me, reflects me and who I am, I feel like when I put that out into the world, regardless of the feedback that I receive, I feel like it makes me feel seen because even if nobody's responding to it, the fact that I was able to create something that feels so me and then put it out into the universe for like people to witness or whatever makes me feel like I'm doing something right in a sense. And I think that's super fulfilling to me. But another thing is most often just having a really good conversation, which sounds silly, but I think a lot of my fondest memories, my favorite memories, have actually been conversations that I've had with people where I felt seen, right? When you have a great conversation with someone, you go back and forth. It's not always just listening, it's not always just talking. And when you get to talk about subjects that are more interesting, more fulfilling, I feel like that makes me feel seen. So, great conversations, that's a big one for me. The next question asks, do you tend to collect your clothes or detach from your clothes? I feel like this is such an obvious answer for my fashion freaks, but I'm definitely severely attached to my clothes. I wish I wasn't, and I wish I could sell my pieces a little bit more so that I could cycle through my wardrobe and add more things without feeling guilty about it, but I struggle a lot because I'm just someone who likes to have a lot of options. I definitely feel like I want to have as many options as possible at all times just in case, you know what I mean? So, definitely attached, need to practice not being so attached, but who knows if I ever will. The next question asks about my current aspirations. Thank you so much for asking me this actually, because I've been thinking about this a lot, especially in this new year, although it's definitely always been something that I keep in the back of my mind, but I've gotten a lot more serious about it this year, you know? So one thing that I've been practicing a lot for pretty much as long as I can remember now is like raising my vibrations in a sense, like strengthening my energy, right? Taking up more space that goes with it. Because I feel like I'm just someone who's always so susceptible to the energies around me. Like I think of myself as kind of like a sponge where I just absorb everything that's going on around me. And I think that that is not necessarily a flaw, but it has definitely affected me a lot over the years because I'm not able to be grounded on my own in a sense. So I often have leaned on people around me to ground me or to bring a good vibe because without it, I often can be more consumed by my own anxiety or even worse, the like stress of people around me. So if someone brings a bad vibe, I feel like I am A, not able to improve the vibe, and B, like become consumed by their negative vibe. You know what I mean? And that's just something I think that comes with being sensitive, extremely empathetic, and super observant of your surroundings. But I definitely have been focused on strengthening my energy so that I can sustain myself in environments where the energy is challenged. Maybe someone is not in a great mood, and especially when it's friends, family, people you care about, it happens. no one's always in a great mood, right? But I admire people that are able to lift the energy and sort of do that naturally. So, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I definitely want to be able to, at very least, maintain my own energy, a good vibe, and not be so affected by what other people bring into the room. You know what I mean? Another thing that I've been focused on maybe for my entire life now is building community. I feel like that one is sort of a thing for everybody, especially in this digital age. Everyone wants sort of a sense of community, and that's something that I definitely value as well. And I feel like I've searched my whole life for it, and I'm still looking, but I'm definitely getting closer, and I think that's a great thing. That's something to celebrate. Okay, last one. I have been really trying to feel, I guess, protected and safe in my surroundings. Not because something bad has happened to me necessarily, but I just used to believe that I'm someone who had bad luck and someone who bad things just happen to. That's definitely a result of an accumulation of bad things that happened, not severely, but small things that made me genuinely believe that I was like destined to have bad luck or whatever. And I believed that with my entire being. And after some time, after an improvement of my mental state, I realized that I was sort of attracting that energy by believing it with my entire being. So as my mental state improved, I definitely started to feel more protected and safe in my own skin, which was something that I genuinely struggled with. So now I strive to feel like, the universe is protecting me, like I have good luck, and I'm in the right place at the right time. The next question asks, do you ever get into creative ruts? If so, how do you get out of them? I feel like this is a given for any artist, any creative, because especially in this timeline, there's a crazy pressure to create things at a way faster than natural pace, right? So as a result, I feel like I get into creative ruts like weekly, bi weekly at this point, because the way that my brain works is like I'll crank out multiple ideas at once and then I want to pursue them as fast as possible before the burnout comes, if that makes sense. So once a week, twice a week, I come up with a few ideas that I'm like willing to pursue. And then as soon as I'm done with those, I feel like I'll never be able to think of another creative concept ever again. And then I take a few days to like recuperate and come back down to earth. And then I'm able to come up with new ideas again, which thank God, because I know that sometimes people get stuck in creative ruts for much longer. In terms of getting out of them, I don't necessarily have an answer. I feel like sometimes you just have to force yourself through it and try to come up with a small thing that you can create that's going to make you feel like you're making advancements. I feel like that subtle confidence is going to help you to create more in the future. And besides that, you probably want to, as much as you can, obviously, like try to ground yourself and like touch grass, as we say, because that genuinely does help. The next question is, what's your process of putting an outfit together? Um, I feel like there's no right answer to this. A lot of times I'll have one piece that I want to style, maybe something new or something I haven't styled yet or something I really love. And then I'll just sort of build around it. Oftentimes I'll take a piece that I want to style and then, like I said earlier, juxtapose the vibe of that piece. So if I'm starting with a more feminine, colorful piece, I might choose a more masculine piece in a color that either complements the starter piece or is in a similar shade range or like is the same color even. But I do always try to implement more than one color or oftentimes even more than two colors because I find that to be really fulfilling. So once you kind of sort of understand what colors look good together, which I feel like is really easy, like you can literally just look up the color wheel. Once you figure out what colors look good together, you can just sort of mix and match and always play with more than two colors. And that's something that I find really exciting when building an outfit. The next question asks, what are your thoughts on quality over quantity? And if you agree, how do you follow it? This is a good question. Actually, I'm not a big quality over quantity person, I think. And I think it has to do with the fact that I'm not a big perfectionist. I like to, like I said earlier, crank out my ideas as fast as possible. And the faster that I can crank out my ideas, I feel like it opens doors for me to have the capacity to think about my next ideas, if that makes sense. I know a lot of creators get stuck in that perfectionist mentality where when they come up with an idea, they want to really perfect it before they put it out into the world. And I feel like sometimes with the pacing of social media and just like, when you like listen to your voice back after you've recorded it and it starts to sound really annoying. I feel like that's kind of how it works, like with humans. We're our biggest critics, obviously. I feel like if I was a perfectionist and I was trying to come up with, multiple ideas a week and I wanted to really perfect them, I feel like I just would not be able to produce at a rate that would be fulfilling to me. So maybe this question is asking more about clothing, quality over quantity in clothing. In that sense, I feel like quality is always something you should prioritize. At the same time, I feel like it's okay to, sometimes you thrift like Forever 21 and those are bad quality, but if you like it, then you should add it to your wardrobe, especially if you're not paying so much for it. The next question asks, do you believe humans have free will or that everything is predestined, and explain? The way that I'm interpreting this question is the balance between like fate and then carving your own path, I guess. I feel like it's such a big split where some people will believe that whatever's meant to happen will happen, and then others will believe that you kind of have to go after what you want. And I actually think about this a lot because I don't know where I stand, to be completely honest. But I think I'm leaning a little bit more on the fate side where I feel like whatever's meant to happen will happen. But that could just be because I'm a bit lazy. I don't know. That might be like a slightly lazy mentality. But hopefully that's what you were asking. I'm like low-key starting to get really cold. The sun is setting and I hope you can see it behind me because it's so pretty. If I get too cold, I'm just gonna end this video. So we're gonna tough it out for now. The next question asks, would you move to Japan? What do you like about Japan's fashion scene, past and present? I feel like a lot of people associate me with my Japan content that I was really cranking out a few years ago. If you don't know, I do travel to Japan really often. I have family there. I'm Japanese. So I definitely have some opinions on the place. The first part of the question, I don't think that I would ever move to Japan unless it was for a really short amount of time, like say 6 months. But I have stayed in Japan for extended periods of time, maybe 2 to 3 months. And I always felt like I wanted to leave at some point, and I never felt like I could live there just because, I mean, as we all know, I feel like Japan's culture is quite restricting. And I always tell my friends and my family this, but I feel like if you're someone who can sort of stand your ground and like isn't affected by the energy and the vibes around you, coming back to what I was talking about earlier, right? Then a place like Japan is great for you because although society is restricting, most people won't clock you for doing like what society would deem as odd type of things, because everyone's very to themselves. But for me, I just feel like I am too conscious of my surroundings and like the way that I'm affecting people. And as a result, I sort of start to blend in over time. I like essentially make myself smaller to fit in, I guess, in a way, but also just to not bother the people around me. And that's the way that Japanese culture works because nobody wants to be a bother to the people around them. And as a result, you get a society of really like minded people. And that's part of the reason that Japan operates so great, and part of the reason why everyone in Japan is quite depressed. So, me, if I lived in Japan, I would be depressed. I would need to live in a place where self expression is much more normalized and almost like encouraged because that helps me push myself out of my comfort zone as well. And I think I need that push a lot of the time in order to be my best self, I guess you could say. The next question asks if my wardrobe is new or thrifted and what the ratio of sources is. I actually feel like most of my wardrobe is either thrifted or like vintage, I guess. I started out thrifting a lot. And then I had a big, like, bai Japanese vintage phase, which is where a lot of my clothes came from, I think. And then beyond that, it's just been shopping here and there on Depop, like flea market finds. And then more recently, it's been, I guess, a lot of gifting. I've been really lucky in that sense where I don't buy too many of my own pieces anymore. But when I do, I tend to pull from like Depop and stuff. But I do have a list of things that I want to purchase from small brands right now that I'm just waiting to have some money to purchase. It really just depends on the timing and like what's coming out, what's good, that sort of thing. The next question asks, how many hysteric pieces do you have? I think I'm actually going to go home and count the pieces that I have. I have a feeling I have a lot. The next question asks, how do you compare slash rate the different cities you've spent time in? So I have actually traveled to quite a number of places. I don't know if I can list them all right now, but I've been to a few European countries, a few Asian countries, and I've traveled throughout the States quite a lot too. And I don't even know what else. I think some of my favorites are always the pretty much anywhere along the Caribbean Ocean because I'm a big like ocean girl, water girl, I guess, because of my placements like I mentioned in the beginning of this video. So I just really love being around water in any way. And the Caribbean Ocean is like quite literally the coolest place, the coolest water. If you've ever seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But in terms of cities, I really like to visit Japan, obviously, and I also really like to visit New York. But recently, I've been really wanting to travel to London, which I've actually been to twice, but I, for some reason, feel like I haven't experienced it in the right way. Like, I don't know. I always thought London was kind of depressing, like gloomy and not super colorful. But I know that London has quite a big fashion space, so I feel like I need to explore that a little bit, and I hope to do that sometime soon. Okay, it's getting really cold and it's getting dark, so I think this is going to be the last question. It asks, how has your personal style changed over the years? So I think I'm just going to plug in some of my outfits from the course of time as I've been exploring fashion. I feel like I didn't even really get super in touch with my personal style until like this past year, maybe this past 2 years. I want to say like 3 years ago when I was getting more into the social media space. I was not as in touch with my style as I am now, although I felt like I was. So, in that sense, I have a lot of progress pictures to show you. But I started out very thrifty girl, just wearing like things that I found at the thrift store, which was super fulfilling at the time. And then I got more into my Japanese brand outfits phase, which you can kind of see. And then I sort of started really honing in on my personal style. So the progression has been pretty cool to watch. And I feel like I've come so far with my style. And I hope that everybody that has asked me about my experiences with familiarizing myself with my personal style also has a successful journey finding their own style. If you're nervous about finding your personal style, I feel like just don't put too much pressure on yourself to figure it out right away. You can kind of play around with the pieces that you have access to and learn through the content that you are inevitably consuming online. Just be careful not to overconsume the content and pressure yourself into figuring things out and perfecting things in that sense. Try to practice figuring out what fulfills you visually in terms of fashion and the pieces that you choose to pick up, but also what feels comfortable and makes you feel the most you, right? Because when you put together an outfit and it feels great, and then you step out into the world with your outfit on, what does that make you feel like, right? And once you start thinking about these things, I feel like you can sort of figure out what you're comfortable with and figure out what's fulfilling to you. And as a result, I think that you will be able to come really close to figuring out your personal style and hopefully quite soon. So, thank you so much for asking me all these questions. We have probably sat here and chatted for like an hour now, although I'm gonna cut the footage down. And you've watched the sunset behind me, so that's pretty awesome. And I've also gotten to show you my favorite beach. So, this has been fun. Maybe we'll do this again in the future, in the summer, maybe when it's less cold. happy spring. I am so excited for things to get better, for us to be warmer, for us to rejuvenate and come back to being ourselves. We'll chat soon. Thank you so much if you've made it to this point. And there's a helicopter going by. I wonder where it's going. Hopefully somewhere cool. Love you. Thank you.